For me, Intramuros would be actually the soul of a Manileño, maybe even the soul of the Philippines, because this is really where Manila and how the entire country was known. There is that special place in history for Intramuros, and so I believe it is our soul. I think Intramuros is important because if you do not know where history started, if you do not know where memories came from, then you will be lost. And so I urge everyone to even read a few chapters of books written on Intramuros, so they will just know how life then was and how it evolved to life now. We have here close to 400, if not 500-year-old history, and so there's nothing like going back in time, and so reminisce for me is the word that would describe how I would feel. I'm Roberto P. Laurel, President of the Lyceum of the Philippines University, Manila, Cavite, and Makati campuses. The original LPU was located here in Intramuros in 1952 by my grandfather, Jose P. Laurel. Lyceum, LPU, has been here for the past 67 years, and I believe it has contributed to nation building. We have a number of alumni who we are very proud of, who have accomplished great accomplishments, achievements in their private and public lives. I wish Intramuros would develop more, that we have more locators coming in. I know there are a lot of challenges, but I want to commend the Intramuros administration, headed by the current administrator, Attorney Asido, for such a focused development effort. It will take time, but progress is there and we can see it moving. And so my hope is that this will continue and that we will become a thriving community, not just alive during the day when we have so many people coming in, but even at night.
It was a very exciting time. That's what I remember most. I was on a holiday and I got a frantic call. Where are you anyway? They have been looking for you. And I said, what about? Having a restoration force as big as Intramuros was at the time didn't exist anywhere in the country. When we came into Intramuros to work, what are we restoring? We do not know. How did it look, except for the ruined walls? That's why we have to dig pictures and pictures and pictures just to be able to provide a background and tell people this is important. This part of the walls look like this. Everything was something that came to us by a calling, you'd say, that we have to do it right. Intramuros is a beautiful memory of the past. It is like a microcosm of all things good and bad. There are many good stories about Filipinos. People who headed the construction of the walls, and they were Indios. The carvers were Filipinos also. People should follow the regulations more, and that they should not seek exemption all the time. And this applies to both government, church, and private owners. I'm Esperanza Bunag Cartunton. I was hired, I would say, I was one of the first employed in the Intramuros administration structure, and that was pretty 1979. You have many people saying that Intramuros should not be preserved because it is a colonial memory and that should be erased. I don't think so. It represents failure. It represents achievement. So it's about time that our people should see Intramuros is not just a symbol of colonialization, but a symbol of our spirit to rise above
right, so let us start. Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the 42nd episode of the Intramuros Learning Sessions. This is your host, Rancho Arcilla, and as always, this episode is brought to you by the Intramuros Administration. So this is our 42nd session. Right, so we are pleased to have today uh, a very uh, a celebrated architect, so who will talk about Jose Maria Zaragoza. But before that, I'd like to read first some house rules. So for Zoom attendees, you may raise your questions via the Q&A button. The Q&A button is found at the bottom of your screen. For our viewers via Facebook, you may raise your questions in the comment section below. Take note that only those who have successfully registered via Zoom will be eligible to get a certificate, and the feedback form will be emailed to you after the session. A certificate will then be sent within a week. And note that this webinar is recorded and shall be made permanently available in IA's social media channels. Right, so our speaker for today is none other than Richard Bautista. So Richard Tuazon Sanchez-Bautista is an architect who is passionate about the arts and culture. He has promoted Malabon to what we know now, and in 2012, he brought in creatives in Escolta to revitalize the district as we enjoy it today. He was previously the in-house architect of the National Commission for Culture and the Arts, and the Metropolitan Theater was one of the projects he handled from 2004 to 2007. He has a degree in architecture from the University of Santo Tomas. Right. So, architect, ready when you are.
Yes, okay. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for finding time for this lecture series. Okay, so as you would see, okay, as mentioned a while back, I'll be discussing to you about Jose Maria Zaragoza, National Artist for Architecture in 2014. Next slide. What makes a national artist? This is being defined, having made significant contributions to the development of Philippine arts. Next slide. Okay, one must remember in architecture we have three principles that we follow. Three principles for firmitas or firmness, durability, or structurability. It should always stand up. It should be structurally sound. That's one thing. Second, utilitas or commodity, utility or function. This is something that most people, not really look into. I'll put it layman. For us, the architects and allied arts, we understand more or less that that's the first thing we have in mind, functionality. How we use the structure, how more or less you would see that, okay, the use of it for what, who, when, all these things. We consider those things. That's the first thing that we really think about. And this one, the third one, venustas. This is the thing that most people just see in architecture. That's why it saddens us, or it's just sad to know that people think of architecture as just drawings. They just think of it, we just want the structure to look beautiful. But that is just one of the many principles that we follow. Definitely, why would you want to design an ugly building? But at the same time, why do you want to design a non-functioning building? And of course, why would you want to design something that would not stand up? So all these things side by side together, that forms architecture, following those principles. Okay, next slide. Giving you a brief idea, bullets of Jose Maria Zaragoza for us to understand where he is coming from. Yeah, okay. He was born December 6, 1912. Then he grew up in Quiapo. They have an ancestral house in Hidalgo where he grew up. that one I will define later why Hidalgo is relevant to his upbringing. Then he went to San Beda College for San Beda for his basic education. Then he took up architecture, graduated in 1936. 1938, he passed the board exams, he became a licensed architect, then established his firm, Maria Zaragoza and Associates. Then there's another turning point. He was married to Pilar Roselio, who was an interior designer. Just imagine the combination of both, the interior designer and architect. Why not? I mean, it's easier. So should Jose Maria think of this? The wife would go on, let's do something like this. I mean, it's a very good combination. Another highlight of his life, he attended a conference at the International Institute of Liturgical Arts in Rome for liturgical arts and architecture. Zaragoza was known for his church design. So this somehow improved his way of designing, most especially planning of churches. Liturgy, there's always a liturgist, but at the same time, at least he's aware of what to do on how. Then also in the same year, he earned a diploma for comprehensive planning in the Netherlands. Okay, by 1960, he was invited to be guest architect for the Companhia Urbanizada de Nova Capital de Brazil by Oscar Niemeyer and Lucio Costa. Oscar Niemeyer tried to remember the name later. It would somehow so connected to how his designs went. Then he died in November of 1994. Next slide. Okay, as I mentioned a while back, this was the house of the Zaragozas in along Hidalgo. So Hidalgo or Quiapo, I mean, what most people know, I mean, even when I was growing up, wasn't the idea of the place as we knew. As you would know, for those who go around Quiapo and seeing all these grand houses, Quiapo was a very gentle neighborhood. So you have the who's who are there, they have names around you. So as you would see, Zaragoza was formed by that neighborhood, seeing them more or less a family of artists, like uncle who did for the muros or better. At the same time, who were his neighbors among them? So that's an action Hidalgo, and even the houses in Quiapo you would see of grand and opulent. So you would see where it's coming from. Slide. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. Next slide.
Richard, are you still there?
Back, please.
Architect, we lost you.
Back. Move back, sorry.
This one? Sorry, we are losing you.
Hello?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay.
But your screen is frozen.
Back. What's happening? Hello?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay. Move back. I mean, from the Quiapo house.
From the Quiapo house, right here.
Okay. Then we. Okay. Next slide.
Okay.
What's happening?
We are losing you. I can hear you, but your screen is frozen.
Okay. Am I okay? Now, let's move to his works. I mean, I divided this into three parts. First, one of among the early Zaragoza works, I would call it, or better, I call it the traditionalist works. Okay, let's start. Next slide. Okay, most of us know Santo Domingo Church as one of his works. Its claim to fame back then, it was the tallest building in the Philippines when it was built. As you would see, despite of certain elements of modernity, he still captured the neo-Hispanic look, applied to it. So, next slide. Next slide. Okay. As you would see, even the interior, you would see that, okay, he tried to adopt or use the traditional method of, okay, once inside the church, you see this, you have this, you have that. But one of the things that we consider here is the width of it, those technological advancements of the period. You would see how wide the structure is, and still at the same time, playing the traditional form of how churches may look. Next slide. Another view. Okay. As you will see, how he applied stained glass windows by Gallo Ocampo. Of course, the shrine of the Most Holy Rosary, one of the first canonical crowned image in the Philippines, is housed in this temple. Okay, we move forward. Another of his works, this is the Casino Español. You would see here that more or less the image tried to replicate a bygone era, as I would call it. I guess its client wanted it that way. So, okay, so you would see that the arches, the colonnades, all these things, the feel of the yesteryears. Next slide. Next slide. Okay. Now this one is in Villa San Miguel in Mandaluyong. So again, you would see the neo-Hispanic or whatever term that's appropriate. But more or less, it continued with the tradition of the yesteryears. Next. Next, please. Okay. This is Siena College in Quezon City. Again, similar to the previous designs, you would see that, okay, it's a revivalist look, contextual, as we call it. It tried to look like it was from the yesteryears. Now, let's move forward. Next. Architecture for God. I don't know if I mentioned this a while back, but as mentioned, as to what I learned, that he became national artist because of his ecclesiastical architecture. Okay, so ecclesiastical, but it's not limited to just simply the traditional look. So now let's show you some of his other works in ecclesiastical design. Next slide, please. Okay, here is a perspective of the Tala Church or Our Lady of the Most Holy Rosary in Tala, Caloocan. Okay, this was designed using the technology of the period, the concept, as you would see with the church. Somehow it looks like a hanger or something, but still, you would see that he applied a certain technology for churches, that like this one. Okay, it's a circular thing. It doesn't exactly represent the looks of a typical Catholic church of the yesteryears, but again, he deviated from the looks. And at the same time, unfortunately, this building has been renovated numerous times, and I just want to show you the original look of the church that he applied technological advancement. Next slide, please. Next slide. Hello. Hello. Am I being heard?
Yeah, choppy po.
Okay. Now, this one I would describe it in this manner. Yes, there's some controversy for this for Quiapo Church when it was expanded. Unfortunately for me, I wasn't able to enter Quiapo Church before it was expanded. So that one, I can't really describe how one appeal designed the building, the interiors. But more or less, when he designed this, as you would see, he incorporated the facade and other details of the belt dome and just old walls of Quiapo Church, and he just widened it. Okay, next slide. Oh, okay, going with the interiors. I mean, that's the reason why there's so much controversy, as we would call it, because people would I mean be sentimental about how beautiful the church was. As an architect, one of the things that I've noticed here, try to look at this photo. You don't see any electric fans. And at the same time, I don't know if the photographer of this one is just good enough to capture the brightness of the interior. But one thing nice about this place, he was able to make the building cool. He applied passive cooling. He applied thermodynamics in his design. So it's something that's really comfortable in attending mass or those such gatherings with plenty of people, the body heat. You would not really like the feel of such a celebrating mass. You with this one, again, I would say that he was able to make the structure or the parishioners, they become comfortable when they attend mass here. Again, as I would say, I hardly see any electric fan inside Quiapo Church. Okay, next slide. Okay, this may not be a Catholic church, but looking at the structure, he played around again by using a technology, a structural design called folded plates. And you would see he was somehow doing things that people aren't used to having. But this one, as I mentioned from the introduction, next slide, as you would see how the interior of the structure looked like. Unfortunately, the structure is already demolished in the 90s. But as I mentioned a while back in 1960, when he was invited to become a guest architect in Brazil, Oscar Niemeyer was influenced him, I would say, largely in relation to this church. Next slide. This is the structure, I believe, where he got the inspiration of the unit church. This was designed by Oscar Niemeyer. Okay, I mean, nowadays I really don't know how people think about originality. For us architects and designers, if you get inspiration from anything, it doesn't matter. I mean, as long as you do something else. But this one's really, how would I call it? Quite, okay, it's to your face that it looked like. It's similar. Okay, he did it in a different way. Okay, next slide, please. Okay, this is the St. John Bosco Parish in Makati. Okay, and one thing nice about this one is how he designed it in a way that using structural design, it's concrete all throughout. Next slide, let's show the interior. As you would see here, obviously with that span, there's no column or barrier. It's free. It's a free space, and as you would see, the ceiling, all this as we call it waffle design. Those are the structural members of the building. So, I mean, he added some more distinction to doing church design and all these things together that somehow created a mark. But I'll be mean to say this. More or less, I call it back then. Next slide. I guess one of the inspirations of the building was this one, the Sydney Opera House by John Hudson. Or, next slide, or the John F. Kennedy Airport designed by Eros Arenet. I mean, with the shape, the inspiration of the structural elements. I mean, it's like I said, it's just so bad for me to say that he might be inspired by, or it looked like that. But again, it's his freedom. But he applied it in a different form. Okay, next slide. This is one of my favorite works of Zaragoza to say. The Church of the Our Lady of Miraculous Medal in Muntinlupa. One thing that I really like with this is that it feels like, I haven't been inside the structure, but it feels like the veil of Our Lady is protecting us. As you would see, the swirl of the roof is reinforced concrete. All these details, it's like God is protecting us. That's the language that I'm seeing with this structure. And again, mostly they draw in concrete. Next. Okay, now we move forward to some of his works, other than the ecclesiastical design. As I mentioned, again, I will mention that back then, I just kind of wondered how he became national artist. What seems to me when I was documenting works by this building designed by who. Okay, so I came across a number of his works compiling them, but I really don't know where they are until, okay, next slide, the architecture format. This is Paiste 12 in UN Avenue. Yes, it's owned by the church, but you would see as well that, I'm sorry for the condition right now when taking the photo. So you would see that he applied a movement of that period, the bristle-A. They thin shell all these things together. As you would notice in the portico, there's this canopy there that's, it's wow to say with that thin structure, and you would it's just a slab. Then at the same time, he applied all these sun baffles, the streamlining of the building, which is very mid-century. Okay, next slide. Okay, but to continue like the one in the Paisa 12, this is the National Library of the Philippines before its renovation. Zaragoza became part of the Hexagon group that designed this building. One thing nice about this, as you would see facade-wise, it's huge windows, then the area, it's sun-baffled, those two wings, and that canopy there, it's a thin shell, I would call it. Okay, if I had to describe this building like Quiapo Church, as the reading area here doesn't have air conditioning. You could just somehow sit there, do your research, read your books or what have you, and yet the breeze of the place, I would say, fortunate as well, it's in Luneta, so you have open spaces around you, but still, it just used passive cooling system. That's at the same time, putting all those sun baffles, which was very prevalent during that period. So I would say, in relation to the next slide, I will define it in a different way. Next slide, please. Okay, now, in relation, this is the Shoe World Emporium in Carriedo and Avenida. You would notice in this design, he incorporated the sun baffle and the windows all together. The problem with sun baffles, normally, you have to provide a space in between the baffle and the windows or what have you. But this one, he integrated the windows with the baffles. So something that, a good idea that somehow utilizes space further. Of course, if you are a businessman, you want every square millimeter of your property to be utilized. So that one, when he applied it, yes, something looking forward to. Okay, continue. Okay, this one, as I mentioned a while back, when I was still compiling my documentation of who the architect, the building, what have you. This is the Field Bank building. Unfortunately, growing up, or when I see this building, or what I knew this building was, I just call it BIR. So when I was asking myself, where's the Field Bank building that's being described? Until so this was the Field Bank building that I usually see. As you would see, I was looking at the building, it, it's the integrity. He also applied all these vertical lines. It shows dignity. And what's nice is somehow played around at the upper floors by putting some more accent in a simple manner. So the building itself, it's such a landmark other than it's located somewhere that's really, to your face. But it's just pleasant to drop by and see the building as it is. But unfortunately, this building has been demolished. Next slide. Of course, who wouldn't know this building? It's one of his masterpieces. Trying to compare Philbank Building and the Meralco Building, as I call it, the gigantic television in Ortigas Center. So it somehow played again around with those sun baffles, verticality, but one thing different about this one is he somehow played around with the shape of the building, the curves. So it created an illusion that would somehow be very pleasant to anyone who's passing by. So it's just so nice. Next. Okay, Zaragoza building that's put in is just one of his works that may not exactly be as exceptional, but he played around, he just used a boxy look to it, rather than them owning it, so that's why he doesn't want to spend much as far as I believe. But unfortunately, I've heard that this structure might be gone in the future. Next slide. Okay, again, when I was looking around, I'm just being thankful to someone who posted in this picture, Manila Nostalgia. After so long that I've been looking around for some of his works, then I just learned this building that in Makati, the Royal Match Building, as I knew it, was something that I really look upon when I really look every now and then when I pass by. I just find it so nice that all this verticality of the design, it feels you're so inspired. It somehow, what's a nice term? Okay, uplifting is one word I would use. So back then, like I said, I only knew it as Royal Match until that post in Manila Nostalgia made mention, the PAL building. So at long last, I finally found it. Where's that PAL building? So there it is. One of my favorite buildings that I never knew, it was Jose Maria Zaragoza who designed. Next slide. But unfortunately, the Royal Match building has been renovated. Now, let's go to another of his, I would call it, craziness. This is the Commercial Bank building in Escolta. But trivia-wise, this was the former site of Savory. As you would notice as well, this spaceship-looking structure, why he made it in a way that it's half circle or circular. One must remember, this was the landing part of what used to be the Puente España. So the configuration of the lot is how it was designed, more or less. It's circular. So he played around with it, and somehow, I would jokingly call it, he played around with his mind by, let's do something futuristic. Which, in relation to the next slide, okay, the Vera Mall, one of his space age looks. As you would see again, he applied certain elements that somehow the space age look. If you're growing up in the late 70s, even the escalator of this building, it has a bubble that somehow you would think you're in a sci-fi movie. So again, you would see that, the evolution of his works, as you see, and up to this Vera Mall, that he's not really the type that he just designed his signature of something that, okay, when you say Zaragoza, it would look like this. But he played around. So, next slide. Okay. Another is this, of course, a controversial Bataan nuclear power plant. Imagine, I mean, people would think, it's a power plant. So what's the use of an architect? But still, he. I mean, nuclear nuclear reactor. That's something that was really new in the country, and up to now, it's still the structure was never used ever since. But looking at this one, it's not just simply the function that's there. You also have to consider the pleasantness of the place and all these things together. And of course, as we know, this is not completed. So I would call somehow it's very beton roots. I would call it. I mean, a style of a period. It's raw concrete. But I don't know what is the real intention if they will be painting it or putting some more texture, some more finishing to it. But right now, I just call it one of those brutalist buildings in the Philippines. That's like to experience, for you to experience to be inside an Zaragoza structure. Try to have coffee here at the JP Laurel Center. One thing that's so nice with this one is how integrated those curtain wall, the full view of Manila Bay while you're having coffee or very pleasantness. Another thing that really intrigues me with this one is the arcade. Normally, when we design concrete structures or something, there's a minimum of at least 4 inches wide because we have to somehow cover the enforcement by at least 1 2 inches per side. But this one, it's a tapering column that I think it's just barely 3 inches thick in one end and some of 4 to 5 inches at the rear. So I don't know what made him do that. So again, if you just want to experience a Zaragoza structure, there's one of the places you would somehow feel his design. Next. Okay, as I mentioned a while, I mean, on and on, looking back, I questioned why he became national artist. But looking around, and like I said, unfortunately, a number of his works either was renamed, that's why I cannot really find it anymore. But better yet, until oh, dissecting his works, you would see that there's a play. He didn't, like I said, he didn't just stick to one style. He played around. So at times you just think of it, okay, what's this building? Who decided? Like you cannot get information until oh, chronologically you would see he used this, he used that. That's why in line with what I mentioned initially, that him coming from the Buena Familia and the artist community and all these things, he's challenged with many things that my name is at stake. So what else would I do? What must I do? So then it's not just stuck to one style. So as you see, I mean, with what was shown, obviously he really deserves the title of national artist because he contributed largely towards something. But again, it's just so simple. It's so simplistic for others that you could just ignore the building because they don't know, it's a Zaragoza until you compile it and say, oh, yes, he deserves it. So anyway, next please. Okay, so you would see the man with many medals. He became an ambassador to Malta or some of the military order. So in line with his ecclesiastical things, with all this design, both for God and for man. So next, I have to thank you for spending time. Architecture for God and for man. Thank you.
Right. So thank you for that, architect, for the very interesting presentation. So everyone, we are
Yes.
now opening the floor to a round of questions. So if you have any questions, feel free to raise them in the Q&A button. If you want to say something, if you have a comment, feel free to use the chat button. And I see that you
By
have
the
a
way,
yes.
I would like to add, in behalf of people from the NCCA,
Mhm.
should there be anyone in listening right now or if there is a call, because they're trying to compile more because it's not, most of Zaragoza's works are not really identified totally. So should you have any information, please add it to the box. I mean your comments so that the NCCA, the pre-comp section could somehow get more information, and if you have photos, better.
Thank you for that, architect. So, dear viewers, if you know any structures designed by Zaragoza which were not mentioned in the presentation, feel free to comment in the chat box of this Zoom session. Right. So I see that we have a lot of viewers today. We are honored with your presence. So we have several, actually. We have 138 viewers. So we have Emil from Egypt. Hi, Emil. It's so nice to see you again. He's a regular here. And we have one from the Pitan, Sophia. We have from Bagak. Hi, Riel. Greetings there in Bagak. And yeah, and Leona from Japan. So hello, everyone. Right, so we are now opening our questions. So everyone, you are encouraged to ask. Right. So architect, how would you
Yeah.
compare Saragosa's early works versus his later projects?
Okay, as you would see with as I've shown in the evolution of his works, back then, that's another issue. I really can't pinpoint the exact years of his work when it was done, but as you would see in the 1950s when he did Santo Domingo, when he did the structures, they were in different forms. So he became more playful later on. Like I said, he did enter the space age look from his traditional, simple. There's a variety of styles. I would put it that way.
So there was really no single factor, like a single denominator distinguishing his early works versus his later works.
Yeah, I'll put it like say, okay, I'll just compare it with Loxine. Leandro Loxine, his works mostly, one of his signatures is that floating box look. Even though when he designed the UP Chapel, it's still a floating looking structure. That was his space age look, I would call it. But most of Loxine's work they look like they're floating. So I would call it his signature. Maños, I would say more or less he was really an advocate of the Filipino look. But with Zaragoza, I would call it that he ventured into different styles, different forms. As you would see, like again, I would say the space age look, the traditional look, all these things together. Okay.
Thank you for that, architect. We have a comment from a relative of architect Zaragoza. We have here
Very good.
Jennifer Zaragoza Galvez. Hi po. Hello po, Ma'am Jennifer. So she said that she appreciates you featuring her relative's contribution and will make sure your request for more of his works. Tama po ba? Yeah, she said we'll make sure your request for more of his works. And then
information where they are.
Yeah.
Yes.
We have a question. We have a lot of questions now. Right. But before that, as an architect yourself, has there a time in your professional practice where Zaragoza has directly influenced you in your planning or in your design?
Okay. I would put it this way. Like I said a while back, that the Royal Match Building that I knew was one of my favorite works of Zaragoza. The way I design things along the line, I call my style fundamentalism. It comes to a point that I just, like Quiapo Church, you just simply have to make sure I apply thermodynamics in design, use of nature is part of it, which I believe, like Quiapo Church, he applied those basic things. With the Royal Match Building, I just love the simplicity and the elegance of it. So blending things together, elegance and tonality of nature, And as far as we call it, that right now there's this move for green architecture, which honestly I don't believe in. I just call it, okay, let's just use nature. Those things inspired me when I learned, oh, because at the same time, one thing that with the Meralco thing, I love to play with illusions. So yes, he indirectly inspired me by simply because back then I never knew it was his design. Okay,
Thank you
that's
for
the
that.
first.
Ma'am Jennifer, she clarified her comment earlier. She said that she will make sure that your request for more of his works reaches the Saragossa clan. Architect, I think I lost you again. Right there. Hello, you are.
So,
I'm losing you.
sorry,
Can you hear me? Hmm.
or first, hello.
Ano po, we are still losing you. I mean, I think I can hear you, but your screen is frozen. Oh, and then we lost you. Okay, guys, so we are going to wait for him to reconnect in a bit. And he's back. Architect, are you there? Hmm.
Kind of adorable.
I can't see you. I mean, it's black.
Uh,
There,
what's wrong with
they're
the
back.
internet connection? Okay, good. As you
Okay.
before I got garbled, what were you saying?
Ah, Miss Jennifer, she said that she will make sure, Jennifer Zaragoza, so she will make sure that your request for
Yeah.
more information of his works reaches the Zaragoza clan. Right, and we have another relative. We have,
Jokingly, I would say.
sorry,
Jokingly, I would ask, how are you related to Raul and Jessa?
to Jessa. Are they
Yeah.
related to, just a curious
No, no,
question,
as
is
far
Jessa
that,
Zaragoza related to this architect? Oh,
no,
he's not.
just a joke, okay?
Okay. So
Okay.
yeah, Jessa is not related to architect Zaragoza. Right. So we have another Zaragoza here, Tia Zaragoza. So she asks, what more can be done to preserve the existing buildings of architect Zaragoza?
Okay, that's beyond my capability. I mean, it's as we know, despite there are a number of works that's designed by national artists that are now gone. I mean, it's really at least it's just nice that people are starting to clamor. Don't destroy it. Don't this. Don't that. But of course, one of the issues I've heard as well, a building in Makati designed by a national artist. The owner is really requesting to delist the building because of structural concerns. I mean, that's something else, but of course, I really don't. I mean, we cannot also blame building owners that yes, they own a property that was designed by a national artist, but if the price is right, that's another thing. I mean, but it's something that if the owner, I mean, a very comfortable location, why not? I mean, it's fortunate that okay, just continue with that with life and preserve the building. Like Santo Domingo, for instance. I mean, fortunately, and for touching again structure, the community themselves will debate about it. But now it's both a work of a national artist and a national cultural treasure. So it's really hard to have it to do something to renovate or destroy it. Okay?
Architect Chappy, you are choppy,
Oh,
your audio is choppy, and you are frozen.
what's going on?
We can hear
Yes.
children screaming. Is that from your TV?
Wait. Better.
I can hear your TV though.
Huh?
Yeah, you're still frozen.
Okay, hello.
You're still frozen.
Same with our noise.
And then he's gone. And he's
Okay, now
back.
we can.
Hi, you're back again.
Yeah. Yes.
yeah, yeah. So we have a lot of very kind comments here. So Poppy Lodico said, "Hi Richard, nice to see you again." And we have
Hi. Hi, Poppy.
yeah, and we have
Poppy,
Maria
by the
Camille.
way, is the sister of Chef Laudico.
Oh, hello, hello Poppy. And we have a comment from Maria Camila Husi. So she said, to accompany this interesting lecture, a very nice reference to Architect Zaragoza's work is the book Jose Maria V. Zaragoza, Architecture for God, for Man, by Maria Lourdes Banson, published by Arc Post Asia
Yes.
in 2004.
Yes.
And we have a comment from Leona Nepomuceno. So the presentation is very informative and interesting. It is so nice to know the landmark buildings by Architect Zaragoza, although some are lost in oblivion. You are right. Vera Mall was futuristic looking in the 70s. And BB Monkey says, just want to say hello and thank you for the session. So BB Monkey learned a lot.
Thank you.
And we have a question from Michael Tabao
Mm-hmm.
from Tugigaraw. What building do you think is the greatest work of Zaragoza, which embodies his design philosophy?
Okay. One of the one of the things I would say of definitely is Meralco Building.
Hmm.
That one, architecturally, philosophically, all these things together. It's a fortunate for its location that you would really, I mean, the location really gives it the opportunity to express itself. The next one, I would say, my favorite is the JP Lawrence Center. So, so that one. But if we are to put the ecclesiastical design, don't have some comments in little ways about Santo Domingo because I know that up to now the Dominicans are having problem with its acoustics. Yes, but if you're to look at it, it was able to embody in that structure that the tradition of how he was, how of his ecclesiastical art, liturgical architecture, my take on the matter. But if we are to say in another form, you probably something that I would say that I really love is the PAL building or the Royal Match because it's so inspiring for a business district that's so relaxing.
Yeah. You are frozen again. Ah, yeah, okay. You're back again. Anyway, we have sorry, Ivoni. We have Ivoni. How do you pronounce this? I hope I pronounce your surname right. Livoa, Ivoni. Yeah. Hi, Ivoni. So she has a comment. So thank you for the presentation. I am Jose Maria Zaragoza's granddaughter, and
Whoa!
I appreciate the telling of this story and life work. It has been very inspiring, the courage he had with his designs toward the end of his career. He has inspired my life's work in architecture as well. So that's from Ivoni. And then
I guess a boy.
we have a question from Zoom. So good afternoon po, curious lang po. Paano po nakuha ni Architect Zaragoza ang project to redesign the Quiapo Church? While sa pagkakaalam
Okay.
ko po, active pa po noon si Architect Nakil. Thank you.
Well, 1986, Juan Nakpil died. So, though that's another matter dahil alam ko nagka-problema rin si Juan Nakpil during that period of that one of his the building that he designed that we there in Intramuros collapsed during the time of the Ruby Tower. So that's why you would see I would use the word active because of the numbers. Then at the same time his office nasunog din. Probably let's put it that maraming church connections din ni Zaragoza. Again, I really don't know the exact story, but looking at it, that's how I view the matter. Okay?
So you are saying that Juan Apil, although he was still active during that time, he did not get the
I
project
would call it.
because
I would put it this way. I'd rather say that. I mean, even in my compilation of the works of Juan Nakpil, it somehow ended towards a period.
okay.
So parang hindi na siya as active as saying, okay, like 50s, 60s. But yes, they're both neighbors of Quiapo Church. Juan Nakpil, who's in Barbosa, Zaragoza is in Hidalgo. I don't know, probably the feral or something. That's another thing. But I just look at it that way. So parang Juan Nakpil died in 1986 at the age of 87. So it's just more of a speculation in my head.
We have a question from Rolando Rendor Jr. What elements from Zaragoza's architecture would you say typify Filipino architecture the most?
Okay, I would put it this way. In any country's architecture, anything that's built in this country is Filipino architecture. I'll put it that way. So, the fact that if we are saying, I will go back to the idea of Venustas. We are not just simply confined to the idea of how the building looks like. So, in terms of his contribution, the fact that it stood there, it's there, you remember it, that's Philippine architecture already. So we call it Zaragoza architecture instead of just plain simple Philippine architecture. Thank you.
Thank you for that. We have a comment from Margot Kamaya. So this is just an additional bit of information. The national artist Zaragoza is related to Jose Zaragoza y Aranquizna and his brother Miguel Zaragoza. They published La Ilustración in the 1890s, and Miguel was part of the Filipino art movement of the 19th century. Thank you, Margot,
Yes.
for that.
That's the thing I made mention of how more or less the mindset of Zaragoza more because of their fact they're from such a lineage. Thank you.
And for those interested in pursuing further this topic, architect, what reading materials would you like to suggest?
Regarding
For those who are interested in reading further this topic, what materials would you like to suggest?
okay, regarding if you're just referring to Zaragoza, right? Correct me if I'm wrong.
This Zaragoza and his style and his movement.
Okay, honestly, that's another thing that as I mentioned, there's not much information until the book of For God for Man came out. There might be some things there in the CCP encyclopedia. It's just not easy to pinpoint an exact material. But in my case, I just go around and look for the building instead of reading it. And if I found, oh, this was designed by Zaragoza, for me, it's a structure that's the material, not a book. Of course, I would analyze it as an architect. But referring to, I would also be honest, I'm not really a fan of reading. Okay.
We have a comment from Zoom. So, is Zaragoza in any way inspired by Greek and Roman architecture?
Well, I would put it this way. Going with the Meralco Building, in our study of history of architecture, they made mention of how the Greeks designed illusion was part of it. So I believe, yes, the Greek. Roman, I would say in a structural way that somehow those two are differentiated by such. The Romans are more in the structural side. Yes, the fact that, oh, how could you play around? That's at the same time making it elegant. but of course, less the opulence. But I mean, those are the two inspirations I would call it. Not the usual thing where you say Greek architecture, it would look like the Parthenon. Roman architecture, it would look like this. But the principles behind it, yes, I believe. Okay?
We have a question from Jojo Leonar. Sa mga works po ni Architect Zaragoza, alin po doon ang mga naka-preserve? If meron po. And if I may add, which of the structures under Zaragoza, designed by Zaragoza, are specifically protected by the state? All of them or just some of them?
Well, okay, right now, okay, is Stephen Pomerada in the crowd right now? No.
He's not here, I think.
Okay. Okay. Anyway, among the things one must remember, in RA 10,066, works of national artists are for the meantime presumed until declared. So protection will come up when it is totally recognized as an important work. That thing, that's a protection will start. But right now, everything's just presumed. I mean, like for instance, it's just sad when what I knew the BIR building or the field bank, to the face of the cultural agencies, it was demolished. That's all. Mhm.
We have feel free to share your thoughts regarding this question. This is a theoretical question. So, from Ren Irvin de la Torre. So, he's asking for a theoretical answer. So, in rebuilding a church in Marawi after the siege, knowing it is in Muslim territory, for you, what would Architect Zaragoza do if ever? So, for the reconstruction. So, this is just a theoretical, just to take the
Yeah.
imagination.
Okay, I could imagine, like for instance, when I show the Union Church, it's not a Catholic church. I did. We just really normally when we design something in relation to the three principles, what do you need it for? What else? I mean, what's the capacity, function? What do you want? What do you need? It's all this combination, so that's the first thing we ask. Then I could imagine probably could somehow play around with certain forms, or if it can be modern, but at the same time being in the cultural community, of course they have to do something there. Like for instance, when George Ramos designed the Golden Mosque in Quiapo, for a very long time it stood until they replaced it. So I mean, it's the owner who would play around with it later on. So basically, I think he would just design the way what is needed and put some, trademarks, I would say. Such.
All right, thank you for that, Architect. So we're now under an hour in our Intramuros Learning Sessions, so I guess we're going to end it there. So, but before we end our Q&A, one last question, maybe. So,
Okay.
As an architect, drawing inspiration from Zaragoza, what words of wisdom can you impart on our viewers who are currently taking up architecture, or for those young minds who are thinking about pursuing a degree in architecture?
Okay, jokingly, I guess in any profession, don't take it seriously, love it, and okay, it's hard to answer. Okay, for the young ones, don't think of it of architecture as because you know how to draw, you can be an architect. And again, let's go to the three principles of architecture. It's not just Venustas all the time. Venustas is just one of the three factors. Like in my way of designing, I make it a point that, as I said, fundamentalist the way is my way. I'll just give you what you need. Then later on, if we want to redo something else, facade-wise, okay, I can still help you with that. But at least I know to answer. I have answered your necessities first. Just I would call it. Put your mind first, the solution before the final elevation.
Thank you for that. So our session has just ended. Thank you everyone for coming. So feel free to follow the Intramuros administration. We are in Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and YouTube. And for those who came in late or for those who missed our episode, feel free to go to our YouTube channel so that you can view this episode in full. And don't forget to hit the subscribe button. Lastly, I'd like to promote our page in Google Arts and Culture. So just key in Intramuros administration. Right. So architect, before we finally end this session, do you have any last words?
Okay, so my last words. Okay, regard. Hmm, you got me there. Anyway, I just have to thank everyone for taking their time and watching this. And again, the call for, I mean, the SSA's call for whatever you know, works of Zaragoza, please let us know in the comments where to find them. Thank you.
All right. We have another Zaragoza relative here. So I'd like to recognize Margarita Tolentino.
Okay.
She said, thank you for featuring my father. Hello po, Ma'am Margarita. So thank you for coming.
Oh, yes.
And thank you everyone for joining us in our 42nd
Well,
episode.
probably, I guess it would be nice as well if we could I mean, the relatives to somehow to meet them to somehow do more compilations.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It would be nice, no? So anyway, thank you,
Yes.
Architect Sanchez-Bautista, and thank you to all of you who joined us in our 42nd episode of the Intramuros Learning Sessions. And till next time, everyone.
Okay, thanks.